All right, back for another edition of the Field of 68 Mid-Major Show. I am Sean Paul, joined by Rocco Miller. Rocco, how are you doing? It's been a pretty interesting week. Some conference play has started, so how are you feeling?
You're feeling good. We're just getting little tastes of it here and there. Not every conference has dabbled. In fact,
Mm-mm.
Conference USA is one we'll highlight today with Jason Hooten coming on later on. Man, they have creeped up into the top 9 of Ken Palm's conference rankings, already passing the American. Sky's the limit, but yeah, like we saw a little bit of Southland action. We saw some Missouri Valley, some Metro Atlantic, and a couple Big West. So
Mm-hmm.
a couple nice pieces to get an early preview of what the rest of the year will look like. I also thought, just in general, we continue to have some pretty crazy results at different levels. So it's been a
Yeah.
lot of fun. How about for you?
Yeah, some upsets, some different things to look at, and what we're mostly going to be focusing on this week is we're going to take about three different prompts, I guess, and kind of pick two things from each of them, some teams of the week, some teams on the rise, some emerging talents, and then we're going to get into some games of the week for next week, kind of like what we did last week, where discussed High Point against North Texas. That ended up being a really good game. High Point with the win. Several other good games throughout the week. So we're really going to touch on what to look forward to and what happened from the last week. So I guess without further ado, let's start with our teams of the week for this week. So Rocco, what were your teams of the week from last week?
Yeah, no doubt, Sean. And good week for us to just kind of catch our breath. It's
Yeah.
finals week. There's not a very loaded slate until Saturday. So just enjoy some time and digest some of these numbers as some of the weekly results roll out this week. But let's take a look back at last week. Here's a team that maybe catch some people by surprise, but they caught me by surprise. So they definitely are worthy of bringing up. The Lamar Cardinals
Mm,
opened up conference play with, I would argue, a very brutal draw. They were going to Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I think universally before the season they were second in the Southland, only behind the vaunted McNeese Cowboys. And
yep.
then their second game was UTRGV 2 days later, doing that deep South Texas near the border swing. And not only did they take advantage of Corpus Christi on Thursday, Corpus Christi was without Isaac Johnson, their star, and I'm hearing they should get him back soon, but still a very difficult place to win. Jim Shaw's a hell of a coach, and Lamar was able to not only get that win, but do it impressively. And then they go and follow that up with an even more impressive performance. Sean, they go to
Dominant.
RGV, the team that took Wisconsin to the buzzer, very highly ranked in the metrics based on a bunch of their performances. Well, Lamar took them to the woodshed. They forced 17 turnovers. And I'm really impressed by this JUCO transfer Lamar brought in, and Alexis Marmolejos. He's from Arizona Western Junior College. He averaged 17 and a half points per game, 18 in the Corpus Christi win and 17 in the RGV upset win. But the whole team played highly efficient, and obviously creating those extra possessions through turnovers helped them win by nearly 30 points. So hats off to the Lamar Cardinals. Who do you got, Sean?
So, my first one that I'm going to get into is Montana State, and that's a team similar to UTRGV, who obviously didn't have some good fortune this week, like we just discussed. They played Wisconsin earlier this year. That was a pretty close game, but in the Big Sky Summit League Challenge, Montana State pulls out two pretty nice wins, one road win over Omaha, and then a home win over Kansas City, who was a favorite in the preseason, I believe, or second, but they haven't been as good. Jamar Brown's hurt, so that's a big knock for them. But this Montana State team, I mean, those are two good wins, and they've been really good so far this year in general. I like what I see from this team. I think Matt Logie is a really good coach, and you look at this team, they are very talented. They have a lot of size. They can shoot the basketball really well. Brandon Walker, who was dominant in their NCAA tournament game last year, he was really good against Omaha, 17 points in that one, 14 points on the season. He's really their best player. He's been awesome. And then a couple of guys that transferred down, Max Agbonk Polo, who's been well traveled at this point. I think he was in the 2019 recruiting class. Like that's the same
Yeah.
recruiting class as Anthony Edwards. Like this dude has been around college for a long time. He was at USC, he was at Utah State, he was at Wyoming. He's been around, but he's really found a home at Montana State. As that option right next to Brandon Walker. He's 6'9", averaging 12 points per game. He's always been a really solid defender, but offensively, he's really taken a step up this season. That's been a real difference maker, adding some size and athleticism, who can play both inside and out for this Montana State team. And then Jabe Mullins, that's a guy I've always been a fan of, dating back to his St. Mary's days where he started his career, and then Washington State. Like these are older
Big
dudes. Like
recruit.
these are
Big
these are
recruit.
older
Yeah.
dudes who once upon a time were supposed to be big time pieces and didn't pan out at their previous locations. So Matt Logie gets them, fits them into his offensive friendly system, and they've been awesome. I mean, Montana State had a lot to replace with Robert Ford, who did just about everything for this team last year, and they don't have a Robert Ford. They don't really have a point guard like that. They just have so many different options with Agbonk Polo, Brian Garacki, who's back, Brandon Walker, Jay Mullins. This team has a lot of pieces. I like them quite a bit, and it wouldn't surprise me if they went ahead and won that Big Sky this year and made the NCAA tournament again. Logie's a great coach. That's a really good program, so they're going to be my first winner of the week. Who do you got for number two?
Great choice. I thought the Big Sky Summit Challenge had a lot of great
Mm-hmm.
matchups, and they did a good job between the two leagues of putting the projected teams against each other. I
Yeah,
thought we had some really
that's
good
smart.
matchups. Yeah, Montana State. I mean, they really impressed. That was an awesome pick there. I have to give the second one to a recent result that came in on Sunday, which is the Arkansas State Red Wolves just going into the FedEx Forum, and it's a program win to go into Memphis and win by double digits, almost wire to wire. I think the last time Memphis led was like 4-3 or something. But
Yeah, that's about as wire to wire as you get.
right, and it was almost double digits the whole second half. So I mean, obviously, if you're an Arkansas State fan, you're probably sweating bullets till the end. But in reality, they had that thing pretty well in hand almost all the way through, which is not easy to do. You know, Joseph Pignon was the hero with 22 points, but as a team, knocking down 12 threes obviously was critical. They overcame 17 turnovers. Memphis turned it over 20 times themselves. So it was one of those up and down games with a lot of great athletes. And I think that's the larger point here is Arkansas State was a preseason top team for both of us, top 10
Mm-hmm.
team for sure, and picked to win the Sun Belt. They have a ton of talent. They're trying to figure out the right combinations, mixing in Kobe Julian, first team All Sun Belt player from Lafayette. You know where that
Preseason player of the year, right?
yeah, preseason player of the year. They also had, Terrence Ford go down last night, didn't come back, so that's a concern. And they were also playing, I believe, without Darian Ford. Darian Ford
Yep.
was out last night. So with all that going against them, they still go to Memphis and win by 13. It's a huge sign for their future. They've had some mixed results. Did not play very well, I would argue, in the Gulf Coast Showcase. A disappointing loss to
You were
Rice.
there, right?
Not that one. I was
Not
at
that
the
one, man. I'm
Daytona
trying to
Beach.
keep track with Rocco's travel schedule, but it's out of control. This dude's all over the place.
But hey, I'll tell you this, Sean. If Arkansas State keeps playing like this, I will find my way to one of their games soon.
There we go.
Um,
Okay.
I saw them. I did see them at Belmont last year, so I have seen a lot of these players. I saw Kobe Julian at the Cajun Dome, so I'm very familiar with the team. I think sky's the limit. They will get coming up this week. They're not in my games of the week, so I'll just mention it real quick. I think it's a really important week because you got to follow that up with a secondary result, hosting a tough UT Arlington team, and then they
Mm-hmm.
go to UAB, who eventually has got to figure it out on Sunday. So really interesting week for Arkansas State, but that was a big confidence booster, I thought, yesterday, Sean.
I mean, that was a huge win, just on Arkansas State for a second. I mean, obviously shorthanded, without Darian Ford, losing Terrence Ford during that game, only 16 minutes, he didn't score a single point. But
Never
the
seen
fact
that.
that they have the depth that they have, Cody Head, the Lipscomb transfer, he came in, had 8 points. Like, that's a guy who hasn't played a whole lot, but he's a sophomore that was really solid last year, transfers in, takes a smaller role. He's, just trying to find some minutes, and he played really well. But the thing about that I've noticed a little bit about these mid-major teams that have just a ridiculous amount of talent is it's really taking them some time to figure things out. Like you look at this
Yeah,
Arkansas State team, super talented. They're clearly the most talented team in the Sun Belt. I don't think that's arguable. But you look at Grand Canyon, they've had some ups and downs. That team is probably the most talented team we've talked about.
High
McNeese
Point.
State. Yeah,
Yeah,
High Point, McNeese State, all these teams that had that ridiculous accumulation of talent, even Princeton to a lesser degree because they weren't bringing in transfers, but they've had some ups and downs. It's really taken time for these teams to find their footing. And I think for an Arkansas State, for a High Point, for a Grand Canyon, for a McNeese, who builds their program around transfers, and a lot of them have that good NIL for this level, it's going to take time for those schools to really figure things out as we're seeing. So early in the season, we're not going to see the best of them probably, but as time goes on, we're going to see a better version of these teams. And Arkansas State, like Kobe Julian, preseason player of the year, he's not even their leading scorer right now. That's Taryn Todd, another guy who's been well
Yep.
traveled throughout his career. Joseph Pinion, that 22 points, 5 threes, transfer from Arkansas, he was great in this game. And Isaiah Nelson, who I think a lot of people, including myself, were like, this could be one of the best mid-major bigs in the country. He still could be that, but Rayshad Marshall has taken over that starting job because Nelson missed some time with injury. And that's a really good big man rotation with him and Nelson.
Yeah.
But Nelson struggled in this game. 5 fouls, 10 minutes, 2 points. It just wasn't a good game for him, but he's still a talented piece. Avery Felts, he's another guy that can shoot the ball. DeAndre Dominguez, UMass transfer, can stretch the floor and shoot it. Like, even being shorthanded as they were, they still had a lot of weapons, and they were still able to go beat a Memphis team who was really good in the Maui Invitational. So, like, you think there's a lot to this whole transfer thing, right? Like, it's a different era.
Yeah. It is, and it takes a while to dial in your rotation pieces, and that's kind of what you're getting at, I think. And once that's dialed, maybe by conference play is the goal. Maybe you get there by by end of January. But yeah, I think the downside obviously is, as mid-major non-power conference lovers, we want to try to figure out an angle to get any of these teams into the at-large discussion.
Hmm.
So the downside is maybe you play yourself out of that because you take a Hofstra and a Rice loss. Maybe those days are over, but the road Memphis thing could get you back on the map. So that's the only downside, really. I think you ask any coach, they're way more focused on playing their best basketball in March. So I think that's the exciting part. I think you look at Arkansas State, I think you look at McNeese, you look at Grand Canyon, and you look at High Point. Certainly those four, all very similar characteristics with the loaded athleticism, the older talent, and just trying to figure out how their parts work and overcome some injuries.
Yeah.
If they're playing their best ball by March, watch out, because that's kind of the holy grail. That's how you get one of these teams to a round of 32, to a Sweet 16. And
Exactly.
and I,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of reasons for hope for all of those teams.
Yeah, the other team that I have labeled here as a winner, they aren't going. I mean, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament. They're not going to win the Big West. That's too good of a conference, I would say. But I mean, they deserve a lot of love. I mean, maybe they'll win the Big West. You never know. But I'm not going to put false expectations out there. There's some really good teams in that league. And Long Beach State, I mean, they hadn't won a single Division One game. Their only win of the year was over Laverne, who D3, I think. So that's a going to be a big week for them as they went and beat Cal State Fullerton on the road. Then they
Yeah.
hosted Hawaii, a very solid Hawaii team, and they were able to beat them by 8. Devin Askew was really good, and I think we're starting to see some of that San Diego State effect from Chris Acker carry over a little bit because they had some good defensive performances in these games. They held Cal State
Mhm.
Fullerton. It was not as good as Cal State Fullerton has been in the past, but held them to .85 points per possession. They were 1 for 13 from 3. Askew was really good. This is just a very new look Long Beach team, like the one that was in the NCAA tournament last year. They have like nobody back from that team, so it's just a completely new look team. It's taking time for Acker to figure things out, but obviously coming over from the Brian Dutcher coaching tree, I'm sure he wants to win games on the defensive end, and we saw that finally start to settle in a little bit here. They get San Diego, they get Pepperdine coming up, so that'll be a big.
Winnable. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a big WCC stretch of winnable games for this Long Beach State team. So if they're 4-8 and then they play another non-D1, that's 5-8 potentially before they host UC Riverside on January 2nd. Some real building blocks for a team that's on the rise, it appears.
Yeah, that's what this Long Beach State program needs, and it's really kind of funny. You go 0-8 against D1. You're going into the most loaded Big West that we've seen in since the '90s, and
Hmm.
you start 2-0.
Not
But
bad.
you're right. Yeah, that's what defense will do for you, though. And their defense has been pretty porous up until that point. They even allowed 82 in that last performance against San Jose State in their MTE.
Mm.
But they really dialed it in. They had, I think, in cases like theirs, they had 8 days off. They really got to focus on, okay, we lost these 8 games. What can we really key in on? What's our best rotations? How do we go into conference play? Because the one thing you'll notice, Sean, that I think you've probably noticed over the years is once the conference play lights turn on, things are a little bit more intense. They're a little more dialed. There's less experiment. There's pretty much no more experimentation. You're going with the things you can bank on. And
Hmm.
we saw a completely different look, I thought, in both of those performances.
Yeah, it was much improved from what we had seen previously, and obviously that could springboard them going into these two WCC games before heading back into some more conference play action. But now let's move on to some teams that are more on the rise and not really in the team of the week conversation. I mean, both these teams, or all four of these teams, had solid weeks, but they're teams on the rise for us here. So, what's your first team on the rise, Rocco?
Yeah, team on the rise. I like this because I like to continuously
Great
now that
suggestion by you, I will add. This was a
oh,
Rocco Miller special.
it's a Rocco Miller special. I appreciate that. Yeah, and one of the reasons I like to do it is because I think college basketball is constantly shifting, and one of the easiest things to lose, especially with what I do with bracketology, because that's always
Mm.
about what you do all season long, and week one is just as important as week 10, which has its place. But I think in terms of trying to figure out what's going to come next, looking at these emerging trends and these teams that are just maybe getting healthy or maybe figured some rotations out, and they're going to be much tougher going forward. I think is really important to talk about as well. So that's why I wanted to introduce this subject. So my first pick with teams on the rise is the Lipscomb Bisons. And Lipscomb, of course, was picked to win the ASUN. I think we have agreed that they were the clear pick on paper.
No
But
doubt.
it didn't quite start off so smoothly for the 2-4 Bisons after allowing 97 points to obviously the nationally heralded blue-blooded Kentucky Wildcats. But right after that game, this defense has completely locked it in four Division One performances, namely the road win at Chattanooga, which was last Tuesday. They have not allowed more than 62 points in a game. In fact, they're number one in the country since that Kentucky game. So again, we're looking at a rolling maybe 3 week period, but they're number one in the country at not fouling, and it's really paying off for
Wow.
them with their size and difference making that they're doing. I think the other thing that they've done really well is just really limiting effective field goal percentage. So basically, I think they're a little stronger on the 2 point side, but forcing bad look threes. The data's really emerged for Lipscomb, and you can see it in KenPom now. They're 97th, back in the top 100. That's a big deal for a school in the ASUN. Doesn't happen every year, and obviously we're still only in early December, but trending really well on this 4 game win streak, and they've got a chance to catch their breath with finals this week. They'll get a one last non-conference test at Middle Tennessee next week, so Lipscomb can feel good about themselves for now.
Yeah, I mean Lipscomb, that's a very talented team. They have a lot coming back with Jacob Ognosovic, Joe Anderson, Will Pruitt, Dylan Faulkner, Charlie Williams. They just have a lot of different pieces, but the real difference maker for me has been Giazi Powell, the transfer from Jacksonville. That was a Jacksonville team last year that was a surprise of the ASUN tournament, and Powell brings that to Lipscomb, and he's been awesome so far. I mean, 11 points per game, shooting over 40% from three. He
Yeah.
has scored 13 plus points in 4 straight games, so he's been a real difference maker. And if they're able to keep defending the way they are with the way they can shoot the basketball, Lipscomb will be that team to win the ASUN like we projected them to be. But getting to my first team on the rise, this team did not win a game this week. I'll let that be known. But I did watch just about this entire game with Howard in Cincinnati, and I came away really impressed by what I saw from Howard, specifically from freshman Blake Harper. This is a guy, a guard, 23 points and 10 rebounds. He turned it over 4 times, but he is one of the best drivers I've seen at the mid-major level so far this year. That dude, he can do it in a variety of ways because he's really strong, but he's really quick. Like he could go and battle a bigger big man, but he could also go and use his speed against a smaller guard or smaller big or a short or slower big and go attack him that way. He's been awesome, and as a freshman, he's just been dominant to start the year. Adding that piece with Harper, with Marcus Dockery, who was huge for them last year, Anwar Gill, the transfer from LaSalle, Dom Campbell, who's a really consistent big man. Kenny Blakeney has a really good squad on his hands again. They rank 198th in offensive efficiency this year. Last year they were 190 when they made the NCAA tournament. They're ranked higher in KenPom right now than they were last year. They just have to slow down the turnovers a little bit. They can do that. This team is going to be a real force to be reckoned with in the MEAC. I think they will anyways. But as long as they can limit those turnovers a little bit, they have enough talent in that really good 1-2 punch with Dockery and Harper to really make some noise in that conference.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's the hard part. It's really cool that you brought up an HBCU going through a brutal stretch of their schedule because that's so common for
Mm.
HBCU. So sometimes it can be really difficult to project, how the league play is going to play out due to the fact that they might come in with some really ugly records like 2 and
Yeah.
11, and we've even seen Texas Southern go 0 and 13 before, and then win the league.
They do that. I feel like they've done that like several times too.
It
Like
feels like
they'll
it,
be like 0 and 11, and then they'll go and be like 15 and 17 by the
and
end of
be
the year and make the
dangerous.
tournament. Yeah.
And be dangerous. Yeah, and Grambling's been close to that lately. So yeah, there's a lot of great examples. I think it's important because you got to be able to get your eyes on them like Sean Paul did, and be able to see the possession by possession development and growth, because you're not going to be able to catch it in the final score in most of these cases. They lose that game by 17-18, but at
Mhm.
the end of the day, they're improving their metrics. They're improving as a team because they're doing it against such high level competition, and that's also going to make them tougher when league play starts.
Yeah, little did
Um,
I know my night about 5 hours later would be derailed by Juan Soto leaving for the Mets, but you know, I got to watch some Howard basketball, so I guess that was good.
yeah, I mean, as a San Francisco Giants fan, we don't feel too bad for you, but the Yankees expect the best, so I can't blame you.
Yeah,
I think you'll be okay long term.
I
But
hope so. Thank you.
for my second choice on in this fun category, Sean, I will take the Elon Phoenix. Now, this has just been an emerging story, of course. I think they've got a lot of people's attention after the big win at Notre Dame, a healthy Notre Dame before the Burton injury. Um, Elon has kept that going with the combo of TJ and TK Simpkins. And TJ, I think, is one of the best passers in the CAA, certainly, if not all of mid major basketball. Just done an amazing job as a floor general. This is a team that hasn't tasted any kind of success in this now Taylor's third season at the helm. They did have a slip up in the start of their MTE against Maine, but they recovered nicely by beating Navy and punishing Pennsylvania pretty badly. I was really impressed with their result on Saturday. They destroyed an experienced Wofford team by 23. And not only that, I
Mm,
thought it was I thought it was really exciting for them to have the Shar Center rocking. I was really impressed with the crowd. I think if that crowd and the combination with the confidence that this team has gained due to that Notre Dame win and overall 6-3 start, they can really be a factor in the CAA race. And it's a pretty open league. Charleston's had a little bit of a grip on it. Towson was picked, but they're going through a lot of injuries. You have Wilmington, who's very offensive, but maybe not as great defensively. Hofstra is going to be a thorn defensively, but maybe not enough offense. And Elon, if they're going to make a almost bottom of the league to first jump, this would be the year to do it. I
hmm
think some of the other things, they actually have a lot in common with Lipscomb, just in the fact of that same period where Lipscomb's number one in not fouling, Elon's number three in the country in not fouling. So they're also getting away with defensive stops and great rebounding and not fouling. So that obviously will impact your field goal percentage because you're not giving up any kind of points on those possessions. And so they're popping as a top 10 team in that category defensively, and they're also top 10 in not allowing good looks from inside the arc. So just a lot of great team defensive signs for the team, and also just individually in that win, you had Sam Sherry play really well. He's a 6'11", 240-pound big man. He didn't rebound very well. He only had 4 rebounds, but putting in 22 points, taking easy baskets. He actually had 3 threes. He's a nice inside-outside piece. You also have Matthew Van Komen there, a guy that we're pretty familiar with coming over from
Another
St.
member of the
Mary's.
2019 recruiting class.
Yeah, he took a long mission. He hasn't played in forever, but he comes in. He doesn't need to score. He comes in, gets 12 rebounds in that Wofford win. So I just like kind of this mix of parts they have, and nobody really expects much from them. And I think that's kind of an easy world to operate in compared to some of these other programs. So watch out for Elon.
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, Nick Dorn has also been awesome. 6'7" wing that can really shoot it, 43%
Yeah,
from three. Him, the Simpkins brothers, Sam Sherry, and I think Sherry and Van Komen, those two work really well together because Van Komen's not a guy that's going to do much offensively. He can be a brim runner, a lob threat. He's that kind of guy. You're not going to dump the ball down to him and expect him to do a whole lot, but he's there to block shots. He's there to run the floor. He's there to throw down lobs. He's there to be an inside presence, a deterrent from people driving to the basket, and that's going to work well, and especially I'm curious how he would work against a team like Charleston when they match up because Charleston has those two bigs with Lazar Djokovic and Ante Brzovic. So that'll be interesting because Sherry will be on one of them. I'm assuming probably Brzovic, but either way, both of those Charleston bigs can shoot it. So they'll try to pull Van Komen away from the rim. But the interesting thing about it
Mhm.
is they don't have to play Van Komen either. Like they could put Sherry at the five because he's 6'11", 240. So Coach Taylor has a lot of different lineup combinations at his disposal, and I think that's really good. They have a lot of size. Three starters, 6'7" or taller. I believe both Simpkins brothers are 6'4", 6'4" and 6'5". So every single starter for this team is 6'4" or taller. That's a big advantage for them. They can shoot the ball well. It's a really good Elon team that I didn't have very many expectations for, and it should be full steam ahead from here for that team. Another team that I have a lot of
Yeah.
hopes for at this point is a team that's slowly getting healthier, and that's Texas State. Another team that I feel like not a ton of people had expectations for. Entering the year, they were 161st in Ken Palm. Last year, they won 17 games. But if you think about what Coach T.J. Johnson did before that, he led Texas State to multiple titles in the Sun Belt regular season, took them deep in the Sun Belt tournament a couple years ago. This is one of the least volume three-point shooting teams in the country. They only shoot threes on 23% of their offensive possessions, which is 361st out of 364 teams. But we're talking about a team here that beat Princeton. They beat Ohio. I believe that was I don't remember what the Princeton game was. That might not have been an MTE, but I think it was because they played them in a 3-day stretch. But they beat both of those teams. They beat Rice at home. This is a really big team. They have Tyrell Morgan, who's been around for a while. He's a really good player. But Caden Gums, he has been an outstanding point guard for this Bobcats team so far this
Yeah.
year. He's really developed as a sophomore. I think he was a steal for them. He's a little bit different than Mason Harrell, who was one of the better guards in that conference for a while, but he is averaging 14 points per game, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. They will have a tough battle against a good Florida Atlantic team coming up. But
Hmm.
besides him, I mean, Joshua Ogaro, a guy who's been around for a while, started at Oklahoma. But the two guys I'm really looking at here are Colton Benson, who was hurt earlier in the year, and now he's back. He's only played one game or 2 games, and Drew Drennan, who is another sharpshooter. He's been around forever. He started at New Mexico. There's so many guys here who started their careers in like 2019, and it's just miraculous to me that they're somehow still in college. But the two guys
Right.
here that I'm really looking at is Benson, who's a big time shooter, and Drennan, who's a big time shooter. They're different from the other Texas State players because this is a team that is big, they're athletic, they can rebound the ball really well, they defend, they play slower. But when you have a guy like Benson who can shoot it from 30 feet, and you have a guy like Drennan who's also smaller, they're both 6'1", but both give an outlet to Caden Gums, who's a really good facilitator. He can dish at them, and they can really shoot the ball from deep, especially because Dylan Dawson, their other shooter, has been hurt. So having those guys as weapons really makes his Bobcats team a lot more dangerous. And we talk about Arkansas State in the Sun Belt, a team with just as much size, if not more, is Texas State.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a really fun battle. I think Texas State has as good of a chance as anybody to win that conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think Arkansas State's got a slightly better chance to win the conference, except for the fact, if somebody else is going to beat them, Texas State's right there at the near the top of the list with James Madison and others. I think you called out some really great points, and yeah, that was the Myrtle Beach Invitational where
There we go. I knew it
they,
was an MTE. I couldn't figure out which one though.
yeah, it's all good. They got popped a little bit by Bradley in the first round, and that's a heck of a response to
Yeah,
go beat
who doesn't?
Princeton the next day. Exactly. Yeah, most teams do. So I think this Texas State team has done a really nice job building the roster, and then this Florida Atlantic opportunity is pretty interesting because I do believe they got Florida Atlantic to pay them to go play this, and
That's tough, man.
it's a really good chance for epitome of brutality out there in Boca this weekend. So that'll be another game to watch, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, if FAU
Which
isn't
is a good
ready,
segue for us here, but yeah.
yeah, if FAU isn't ready, that'll be a tough one. But yeah, go ahead and take that segue for us.
Yeah, that's true. Well, FAU is still trying to find themselves, and obviously a very athletic team themselves. But yes, here we are, games of the week. A lot of good choices on Saturday. I think it was hard to pick one for the midweek, so I'm going to go for my midweek choice, Sean. Tuesday night, we've got an Ocean State rivalry with the undefeated Rhode Island Rams, not a team we cover on the show, but they're going against a hot Brown team that pulled off a little bit of a miracle win against Bryant over the weekend. I watched the game, and Keno Lilly Jr. nailing an open three on a questionable screen. That could have been a moving
I
screen.
thought it was legal. I thought it was legal. I mean, it was a hard screen, but I mean, was it illegal? I don't know. And he made the shot, so I'm gonna say it counts. It was legal. Brown won, so I'm gonna go with it. It's legal.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a really important game locally for the whole state. But Rhode Island, with them coming off the Providence win, and not only
Mm,
that, I think Rhode Island is solid, and they've earned that undefeated record. But they've also a lot of those wins were against lesser competition. It's
yeah.
clear that Rhode Island is talented, but really not all the way tested. And you got to remember, Brown has actually won 3 in a row in this series. And they tend to always just play one of their best games of the year against Rhode Island. Maybe it just feels that way because of the 3 game winning streak. Because I think before that they lost 7 straight to the Rams in a different period of time before COVID. So I'm
Dan
really
Hurley's
curious.
Rams.
Yeah, and Browns had to overcome those injuries, and they're really starting to come together in a much more competitive way. And the atmosphere will be terrific. They're at Brown in the Pizzota Center, I believe it is, and they're going to have a Rhode Island team. Yeah, this is kind of when you want to catch them, right? They're coming off their big high. They've been celebrating all weekend. This is a really good chance to catch URI and sober them up a little bit. I'm really looking forward to that game Tuesday.
Yeah, my first one, which is my midweek game here, is going to be Louisiana Tech, a team that I've talked a lot about throughout the year, and Georgia Southern, who I think is a team on the rise. They had a really good win over North Florida. That was an entertaining game. They're a bit shorthanded. Adante Holloman has missed a couple games, but this is a good Georgia Southern team. Charlie Henry's doing a good job with that program. Aaron Banks is a really good player. They have some size, and that's going to be very important against Louisiana Tech and Daniel Baccio. Louisiana Tech, they lost 2 straight games before beating Louisiana. It's been a really rough
Mhm.
season for the Raging Cajuns. They're 1-8, but losing Hosanna Katinje really put them behind a little bit. But Louisiana Tech, Georgia Southern, that is going to be a really fun game between the Sun Belt and Conference USA. I want to see what we can get from Georgia Southern's offense because it's been a real struggle for them this year. But I think at his heart, Charlie Henry's probably more of an offensive coach because he comes from the Nate Oates tree. But their defense has been really solid. They force a lot of turnovers. They just get beat up inside a little bit, which could be tough against this Louisiana Tech team. So that's what I'm really paying attention to.
Yeah, and Louisiana Tech on Monday of next week hosts Grand Canyon. So it's a
That'll be
little,
a good one.
yeah, it's a little second nature, almost a little bit of a football term here, but it happens in basketball as well to maybe be thinking ahead to that. So they don't want to be caught. This is what we would call a sandwich game because they know the big one's coming on Monday.
Mm.
So that could be an interesting factor. Every once in a while, you'll notice a team in that situation. Both those games are in Ruston, by the way. So a team in that situation, you'll see quite frequently maybe sleepwalk in the first half. The Bulldogs will have to be, fighting against that.
Mm.
And I like that Georgia Southern team. They were my sleeper dark horse team for the entire Sun Belt. Still certainly haven't peaked, but I think beating North Florida over the weekend in that grueling overtime game will help their confidence. So for my weekend pick, Sean, I'm going to go with a game that I plan to be at. So that makes it a
Let's
little
go. There
easier.
we go. Rocco's travel schedule.
So Sunday there's a very nice triple header happening in Milwaukee, and the one game that falls into our bucket is Milwaukee versus Akron, and I think it's exciting for a few reasons. First off, we're still learning about the Zips. They had a road game at St. Mary's, which they were just a little overmatched. It was early in the year, and they were impressive in the road Arkansas State Sun Belt Challenge game where they went to overtime, had their chances actually to win that game, lost it in OT, but a good showing there. And then, quite frankly, all the other games besides maybe Northern Kentucky, they've been the dominant team, and there's some nice pieces to like. On Milwaukee side, they're coming off of a conference play week, but they have the excitement of getting to play in the Bucks Arena. So this whole triple header
Mm.
is at the Fiserv Forum.
That's
So
fun.
they've got to be juiced up. I think it's a matchup where right now on Ken Palm, they've got it a 1 point game, so it should be terrific on paper. But again, we're still learning about both squads. We do know that James Okonkwo for Akron and Jamichael Stillwell for Milwaukee are two of the elite rebounders in each the Horizon League and the MAC, and they're going to be going after each other on a glass battle most of the night. So I'm really looking forward to that, and really just overall to learn about the squads. I think they both have really strong potential to not only compete for a championship in each of their leagues, but then ultimately play for that automatic bid later on in March.
Yeah, it's a good call. I like that Milwaukee team quite a bit. They have been a bit of a surprise for me. I thought they'd be up there, but losing BJ Freeman and having to replace his production is
Tough.
tough with how good he was the last couple seasons. But Damus Fultz has been a great addition for them coming over from
Mhm.
Louisiana. Guy with
Good
tournament
player.
experience. Yeah, he was a starting point guard for that team at Louisiana that made the tournament a couple years ago with Jordan Brown. But now looking at my other game for the week, I'm going to focus on one between two teams from the state of Kentucky, Western Kentucky is hosting, or yeah, they're hosting Murray State. That'll be a really good game between a team in Murray State that has a chance to win the Valley, and then a team in Western Kentucky. And we talked about Conference USA as good of a chance as I would say anybody to win that conference. Louisiana Tech's
Yeah,
still the favorite, but I mean that Western Kentucky team is no joke. Hank Plona,
they're
really
getting
good
better.
defense. Yeah, they're getting really good. And a big reason why is Julius Thedford, their freshman. He's been fantastic for them. One of the better players on that roster. This is a WKU team that is coming in. Their only losses have been to top 100 KenPom teams. Wichita, Grand Canyon, which was a game that Western Kentucky probably should have won, and then Kentucky. So this is a team that's battle tested already. They're hosting Murray State. That should be a really tough environment for the Racers to go in, but I think it'll make them better as time goes on. The size advantage probably a little bit on the Racers side, but they both have some size. I'm just excited to see Thedford, Don McHenry, and then Jacoby Wood on the other side. Kyron Lindsey's been really solid coming in from the portal. This will be a really entertaining game, and I think these two teams will have some staying power in our rankings throughout the year because they're just both legit.
Oh, no doubt. I agree 100% with that, Sean. Yeah, I think with Western Kentucky, they just continue to improve. Murray State has, like you said, the returning talent, and they've had some nice performances. That road win at Middle Tennessee still pops in my mind.
Hmm.
Their only losses are Pitt and a tight one against a talented Utah Valley team. I'm sure they would like to have that back, but this game will tell us a lot. It's also a big deal locally. I've talked to both people at Western and at Murray about this series. It was a big deal to get it back on the schedule. It went away for a few years. I think they now have a 4-year deal to keep it going, alternating.
That's solid.
Yeah, this year in Murray and next year back at in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So again, the fans get really into it. These are two of the best fan bases in that region of the country. Certainly, two of the largest fan bases in all of our jurisdiction of mid-major basketball. So should be in a tremendous environment on top of all of that.
Yeah, what would your prediction be for this one? Western Kentucky, they are supposed to be 3-point underdogs according to Ken Palm, so uh, take that with what you will. Or actually, no,
Yeah, I
Western
mean,
Kentucky's supposed to be favored by 3. My fault.
yeah, I think in any game where the home team is playing against an opponent that's virtually about the same level, and I have Murray State at 10 right now in my rankings, and I think Western's at 18. But regardless of that, I would always go with the home team. I think Murray's going to be hard to beat at home. They already lost once at home. Most years, at least in the Ohio Valley days, it's their third year in Missouri Valley now. They would only lose once or twice all year, if that, for the whole season. So I got to go with Murray State. But like you said, Western Kentucky's improving a lot, and it wouldn't shock me if the Hilltoppers stole a road win.
Yeah, I think I'm going with Murray State in this one as well. I mean, both teams are really good, but Murray State, I mean, they can shoot the basketball well from outside. Jacoby Wood's a really good player. I like Terrence Harkham. He's been a good piece for them. But A.J. Ferguson, transfer in the conference, he's been really good, was at Southern Illinois, but it seems like Steve Prohm has really unlocked something in him. And they just have so many
Yeah.
different scoring options with Wood, with Lindsey, with Harkham, with Kylan Milton. They just have a lot of guards. They have a lot of different guys that can go get a bucket, and I think it's going to be a big factor here in this one. So I'm going with the Racers to win. Anything else on your mind before we head out for the week?
I just think Saturday is so unbelievably loaded that I purposely avoided picking a game that day because you're going to need to manage about 140 different games
Yeah.
if you're like Sean and I. So just good luck on Saturday. Stay close to as many monitors as you can. Otherwise, enjoy some downtime this week, recover because things are going to be really cranked up once we get to the weekend.
Yeah, get some naps in, get your research in, and then get ready for the weekend and full steam ahead from there because college football, for all intents and purposes, is pretty much over at this point, besides the college football playoff where Rocco's Huskies are sadly not there this year. But yeah,
No.
maybe they'll be back here in the near future. But for this week of the Field of 68 Mid-Major Show, Rocco Miller joined by Sean Paul. Appreciate you guys for listening. Like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and all that and on the YouTube feed, and we'll be back next week. All right, here for another interview on the Field of 68 Mid-Major Show, and I'm excited for this one because this was a great game on Saturday. New Mexico State head coach Jason Hooten joining Rocco Miller and myself. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys today?
We're fantastic, Coach. We're still buzzing from that game that you won in Albuquerque. Had to get you on the show today, so thanks for joining us. And
Yeah, no, it feels good to, have somebody like you all that actually want me on. It's been a while since I've been on anything like this. Nobody wants to talk to a 13 and 19 team, and for that matter, we're still 4-5 right now. We have a long ways to go, but
Building
Saturday.
blocks.
Yeah, but Saturday was, it was a good stepping stone for us for sure. I think
Mm.
more than anything, it just showed our guys what they're capable of doing, and being able to play on that kind of stage in front of that crowd is hard to explain.
yeah, and I think Sean and I felt the excitement of that. So when we were talking about who to bring on this week, your name just kept creeping up and up, and you made it to the top of
Yeah.
the list. And I'm glad that you were available. Sometimes that's part of the challenge as well, and timing's everything, right? I think Sean and I like your roster, for the forecasted season ahead. Obviously, we're just starting to put some pieces together ourselves from a national analyst perspective. And your league. Not only that, we need to get somebody from Conference USA on the show because this league is pretty astounding. You woke up this morning, you guys were already ahead of the American Conference in terms of Ken Palm Conference rankings. And a lot of that has to do with not only your win at New Mexico, but Louisiana Tech and Liberty has kind of carried the flag so far, but a lot of quality throughout. What are your initial thoughts just from afar before you start playing against these teams?
Yeah, I mean, last year being our first year in, I thought the biggest difference between Conference USA and the WAC the year before was a little bit of size. I thought that everybody has two or three guys 6'10" or bigger. And so I thought that was really the biggest difference in the two leagues. And
Yeah.
obviously the WAC is really good as well. But it's like most leagues, Rocco. I mean, there are a lot of really good teams. There's a lot of really good players, and there's a lot of really good coaches. And I think from top to bottom on any given night, I think anybody can beat anybody. And I think that's also the sign of a really good competitive conference. So, we're happy to be in it. I know there was a lot of rumors early in the year about, movement and stuff, but we're excited about Conference USA. And, other than the travel, I think it's a tremendous basketball league that doesn't get enough credit. But as you said this
Hmm.
morning, you wake up, you look at Ken Palm, and we're ranked number 9 right now, which,
Yep.
out of 32 leagues, that's saying a whole lot.
Not bad. Yeah, so Saturday's win, obviously, against your rival from the same state, New Mexico. That's a big one. You guys were big underdogs. That's a tough place to play in the pit. But just thinking about what happened at the end of that game, in the end of regulation, you guys led by 15, and then the goaltend at the end, which, the shot wasn't going to go in, but that's just a tough situation. You're trying to secure the rebound. What's going through your head, and how do you keep your guys thinking in the right direction after a play like that? Because it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of teams just kind of fell off after that, but you guys went full steam ahead and just kept hitting shots in OT.
Well, you know, I'm probably I probably don't need to tell you what was going through my mind. That's probably not for TV.
Right.
No, you can
Um,
speak your mind. It's okay.
no,
We're good here.
you know, we've all made some boneheaded plays in our life, and the first thing that I asked Rob was just, "What were you thinking?" And his
Hmm.
answer to me was good. It was correct. He was like, "Coach, I thought it was short, and I didn't want somebody to catch it and tip it in." And how can you argue with the kid? I mean,
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
the end of the day, was it a smart play? No, but I see what he's thinking about, and he wants to win. He's trying to make a play to help us win. You and I both know that it was short. And after watching the film 100 times, in my personal opinion, it's not a goaltend either. But that's neither here nor there. I thought, like you said, and really the biggest thing out of all of it, and what I got out of it, is it showed some resiliency and it showed some mental toughness and some intestinal fortitude by our kids to just not give in and actually play even better in overtime.
Yeah.
We're 4 for 5 from the field in overtime, and they didn't score for like 3 or 4 minutes of it. So I just thought our guys buckled down. The number one thing I did, the first play I called in overtime was for Rob. we ran a play for him to shoot a three and he made it. And they had scored first on the other end to go up 2, and we came down. He hit a three for us to go up 1. We got a turnover. We came back down. Cook hit a three, and now we're up 4. And next thing I know, I looked up and we were up double figures in overtime. So it's just, you don't want it to, guys, you don't want it to end that way. But maybe deep down, maybe that's what we really needed. Maybe we needed that to just see what we can do and what we can overcome. Because our message to this new team, more than anything in the fall, has been, how are we going to handle adversity? And I don't think there was any more adversity that we can see, knock on wood, than what we saw, Saturday night in that environment. I mean,
Mm.
what an environment. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but
I haven't, but I've heard amazing things.
it's just incredible, man. And look, we all have our own crowds and the strengths of our crowds, but those people over there are relentless now. I mean, they know basketball, but they're not real nice. And so, I just think that our guys handled, no matter when they made a run, and you knew we were up 15, but come on, you knew they were going to make a run. And I think at one point, Nelly Joseph got a steal and he went down and he was about 10 feet above the rim and dunked it. And that place just went crazy. But our guys it didn't bother them. Nothing really bothered them and nothing shook them. And we executed, we shot the ball great. And I hope this really propels us and, gets us going in the direction that I think we're capable of going in.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Coach, because I'm tentatively set right now to get out there next week to see New Mexico play VCU, which is, outside of your big game.
Yeah, 2 fan bases.
Hot game.
Good ones.
And that was a series, behind the scenes, that was a series I helped put together. So I'm really excited that they're doing that. It just made a lot of sense. Both teams
hot game right there. That'll be a nice game. Yeah.
We'll get the return
they sold
game
it out. I mean, 15,411, I think, is what it holds. And
that's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was probably, more there than that. I mean, I'm sure. But it was great. It was a great atmosphere. And, they got a really good team. I think we played well for sure. I think our will to not lose, definitely got us over the hump. But, I think we got them at a good time too. And I think a lot of that, always plays a part.
Yeah, and I appreciate the humble perspective on that part of it. The energy that you brought early, I think, was also pretty key. I think you had a stretch in the first half where you hit like 8 threes in the span of less than 6 minutes. That obviously can put the other team on their heels no matter where the game is played. I was curious too, the Battle of I-25 and the circumstances under which the job even opened for you to take. There's a lot of recent history with the heat of the rivalry. But I think, just some overall national questions I think we're curious is about, this being reduced now. This is the first year where it's just a once per year game. I know that's a big topic locally. And just maybe your overall thoughts on the rivalry and where you guys go from here.
So, really good question, Rocco. I think, I think the number one thing about this rivalry that's different than anyone I've ever encountered, I grew up in Texas, and obviously Texas A&M and UT is probably one of the greatest rivalries of all time. But, it's weird because I have a lot of relatives that are both graduates and they coexist, right? Like, there's people that live in Austin that are Aggies, and there's people that live in Houston that are Longhorns and, that area. So it's different in a sense too, that Texas is so big. You got 21 Division IIs in Texas, or 22. So there's a lot to that, right? And then, you had Sam Houston and Stephen F. Austin, which it is a big time rivalry. There is no doubt about it. But this one is different. And the reason that is different is, number one, there's no pro teams in this state and that's it. And so I don't know how to really, really probably give this the credit that it deserves, but New Mexico and New Mexico State are North Carolina and Duke to these people. Mm-hmm. Like this is basketball is a big, 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 big deal. And the last thing I think that makes more sense than anything is the culture here for these people in New Mexico is pride. I've never seen more pride in my life, and in this culture. And man, these people they have a lot of pride. And I think some personal stuff like, we all know New Mexico has a pretty good budget, and
Hmm.
they're funded pretty well there. And I do think that our people know that. And I think anytime that you can beat someone that has a little bit more than you, and you feel like you do more with less, I think that also takes a lot of pride. And you know, uh, there's a lot to that. So I think all of those things kind of conglomerated together. That's what puts this thing so remarkable. And it's exciting. It's neat to be in. It's just a little surreal to know that Coach Henson was in this, and all those different great coaches that were in New Mexico back in the day. I mean, it's been that way for years and years and years, and I don't see it changing. The reason that we cut it down to one, I think that Coach Patino and I we kind of came to an agreement that we both agreed on this. And I think the biggest reason is, it's really a lot to this game. And I think it's asking your kids a lot to get up for something like this within a 2-week period. If you'll look at our women, they played there on Friday night and played here on Sunday afternoon.
Oh, wow.
And I just think there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
I think that, you're trying to get ready for Conference USA or Mountain West. And it's just tough. I think it's tough for I know the people and the fans like it, but I don't know if they know what goes into just a game like this and how much more magnitude there is for your kids.
Hmm.
And so we both agreed that maybe just once a year was a smart way to go about it. I also think the other reason that we did it, guys, was, the Mountain West is, what are they at, 22 conference games now? And we're at 20 as of next year in Conference USA. So that basically leaves you with 9 to 11 games that you can find in the preseason. And that's hard. I mean, you're taking
Yeah.
2 of them away right now. You're looking maybe them only having 7 more games to get. I just thought there were a lot of good reasons why not to do it. And the last one, which maybe it doesn't make sense, but we were the only school in the country that was still playing their rivalry twice.
Right.
No
That's
one
what I
else
was going to
is.
say. I was
I
going to
think that
back you
makes
up,
sense.
Coach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no one else is doing that. So I just thought there were a lot of really good reasons. I don't think
Right.
he was scared of us and we aren't scared of them. And I think it was just a really good maybe decision. And who knows, maybe it only lasts a year or two, and maybe we get
Sure.
back to it someday. But we stagger stepped it with the football game so that both schools could get economically, both schools could benefit each year. So football played here this year. We went there. Next year, our football will go there and they'll come here. And so we'll try to keep it like that for as long as it goes. Then, they got a new AD, and who knows, what that might come of. But yeah, it's kind of where we're at right now. And then last part of your question was our team and where we're going. I just still think we're young together. I think we're still learning each other. We're learning how to work hard every day. We're learning how to be everyday guys. We're learning how to move the ball, try to play without holding it and getting stagnant and sticky. Our big guys, I like our talent, but we have to get better, and we got to get tougher and, understand really what it takes to win, how hard it is to win. And look, again, I think some of the stuff we talked about before we came on air about the portal, like there's not a lot of time anymore. Like you've got a certain window that you got to get it done in. And, unfortunately, you almost got to learn on the fly. You got to learn by playing games. And so maybe your records aren't what they should be. Like right now, I think our record should be better than what it is. But I think that our team is going in the right direction.
Yeah, another question from each of us here before we wrap it up. And the one thing about your team this year to me, and obviously your teams at Sam Houston State had some really good guards, but this year at New Mexico State, you have some really good guards. Christian Cook, 27 points in that win. Deontay Bostic, he's been around for a while at Murray State and CSUN. He had a really big game, hit some big shots in OT. And Zoddy Jackson, the transfer from the non-D1 ranks, he's been really good as well. How important are those 3 senior guards to your guys' success in Conference USA? Because that's a stacked league. 9th in Ken Palm, as we talked about earlier. Just how important is that trio for you guys?
Well, they're all 3 real good players. And I think they all bring a little bit of a different, a different flavor for our team. Zoddy's really solid. His assist to turnover ratio is 2-to-1. We kept assists from the day he walked on campus in any 5-on-5 competitive. And by the time we started practice, he had like 121 assists and like 19 turnovers.
Good ratio.
And,
Yeah.
and that's against somebody that fouls way, way too much like we do. So, I think he handles the ball well. I think he is still learning the speed and the pace of Division I, right? And so there's some improvement to be made there for him still on a daily basis. Cook's a guy that's got, I mean, let's be honest, he's got some skins on the wall. He's a guy that put up some big numbers for us last year in some really key games, right? Like, he carried us home in overtime here against Liberty and Jacksonville State, and Middle Tennessee. I mean, he's played in some big parts for us. It's different though, when you go from being Robin to being Batman. And so, he's learning a little bit of that too, how to be the guy that you got the mark on your back and the scouting report is going to be geared towards you a little bit. So, and then, Deontay is, I think Saturday night was the first time we saw the true Deontay. And, I thought Saturday night he was hard to keep in front of. He got downhill when he wanted to. And then, man, the Joker, he's got an unbelievable canny way of finishing around the basket with big guys. I don't know. He takes on contact, and he really finishes well against length, against size. He just takes it right at those guys' chin. And so I thought he was tremendous. And in fact, I know Cook had 27 and I know, Rob was amazing. But to me, I thought the guy that really helped us win that game was him because, Zadi fouled out and like 4 or 5 minutes left in the regulation. And, Deontay had to kind of wheel us in there at the point. So his versatility, we start him kind of at a wing. So we start a little small up front, although Peter's 6'7" and, Emmanuel's 7 foot. But, he just plays bigger than that. And I think the one thing that he has that I love the most is a competitive edge, and he's got a really big heart. So, yeah, I think our guards are good, and I think that they're going to continue to get better and improve.
That's phenomenal, Coach. Yeah. We'll wrap it up here with this. I think, I talked a little bit about the strength of Conference USA, but I just more of an overall question because I understand the format of the league pretty well. Sean and I watch it religiously like we do a bunch of leagues, but you got that Thursday, Saturday format. What we've learned so far about your team is you've been in a handful of close games. Obviously, until the New Mexico game, you really just had the one against Corpus Christi that you pulled out, which that was a really good win, but then fell short against the Bowling Green game and the Abilene Christian before that, and UNLV you hung in there but fell short as well. Is there some things that you can take away now that you've been through the good side and the bad side of close games, and then also know that you're going to be doing Thursday, Saturdays that are going to really stick with you as we hit January 2nd against your former team?
Yeah. Rocco, I think anytime you can play in those close games, we hate them, right?
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of them though.
There's gonna be a lot. I mean, you guys love them, right? And watching them, and
of course,
I'm no different than y'all. I mean, heck, I watch games every single night, and even if it's one of my friends coaching that I'm pulling for, you're wanting to see a good game and you're wanting to see something close and down to the wire. And me watching those games, I learn a lot, right? I learn like what somebody's doing defensively. Like I watched the end of that Oregon and UCLA game.
That was a good game.
But you're sitting there going, man, the possession before that, I know what they were doing, but they didn't get a good shot, right? And then they gave UCLA or Oregon a chance to go down and score. Now you got to come down and now you have to get a good shot, right?
Yeah.
And they did it. They got it.
It was a bad shot and it went in.
25 lucky, footer that went off the backboard, right? And they're living right. So I learned from that, right? Because I've had a game like that this year already where, man, with a minute to go, even though we're a possession ahead or even though we're 2 points ahead, like, man, we need to get a good shot right now because if we can go up 4 or we can go up 3 or 4, now it really puts the pressure on that defense. So I think we learned a lot from that because I think we also are still trying to figure out what play is it that we want to run then?
Right.
And who do we want to get it to? Right. Mm-hmm. Like who wants to take that shot or who do we need to get to take that shot? So I think that's a lot of it. We're just trying to still figure that stuff out because look, the end of that Corpus game, you can't simulate that in practice. Like you just can't. You can try, you can go over your last second stuff all the time. But man, when you're up like that and somebody's coming back, coming back, coming back, and then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden they catch you
Hmm.
and it's now tight, those are things that you just can't simulate. So I thought it really helped us. The UNLV game was the same way. We were up one with like 2 minutes to go. We needed to stop. We didn't get a free throw block out. They get a putback. And now we got to go down and we got to get a good shot. And I really felt like we did. It just didn't go in. So we've had a couple of little bit of everything. The Bowling Green game was so weird because those guys zoned us the whole game and we hadn't
Oh,
seen
that's what they
zone
do.
all year long.
Todd
And
Simon, it's coming
yeah,
with the zone.
yeah, and so it was a great move by him, but it was only a great move by him because we hadn't seen a bunch of it. It wasn't a
Mhm.
great move in the sense that we didn't know it was coming. Like,
Hmm.
I
Right.
mean, we were in the hotel the whole night. We're like, they're going to zone us for 38 minutes. Like, we know that, right? But you
Yep.
can't go out in the parking lot and just execute against a damn zone that you hadn't worked on all year long. So it was a tremendous coaching move by him. And I really thought our execution was really poor in the first half. And it was a reason why we were up one or down one at half. And I really thought we should have been maybe up 10 because the second half, I thought we executed against that zone really good, like, we did. And we finally started making a few shots, which you have to against a zone.
Hmm.
Right.
So I just think all those games are great for us early in the year. I'm happy with our schedule and the way it flows and the way it sets up. It's fair. Right now we're 4-5 and we should, woulda, coulda, shoulda, but there's some games on there that we've let go and left out there, I think, a little bit. So, right now we could very easily be 7-2 or 6-3, but we're not. And you know what they say, you're who you are. And I think right now that we're a team that just needs to get better.
Well, I mean, beating New Mexico is certainly a step in the right direction, and that's the main reason we brought you on today. So thanks again to New Mexico State head coach Jason Hooten for joining us. Definitely not going to be the last time we talk about you guys because you guys got a squad.